I want to talk about Marcus Rashford now on ESPN FC with the former Manchester United player, Danny Higginbotham. The first question I've got for you, Danny, if I give you a tactics board and you had everyone available, where would you play Rashford? Where would you play Martial? And what formation do you think best suits both players?
I think if I'm looking at Rashford, then he plays on the left-hand side. I don't think there's any question about that. I think that's where his best footballs come from. I remember having a few conversations with the manager, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, over the last year or so, and he wanted a team that was, very fluid, as in terms of the front players, and he wanted to play a system that was dynamic, athletic, and you can see that that's what they're starting to do now. And I think that when we talk about Rashford, we have to also talk about Martial, because in my opinion, Martial is a magnificent player. And I think at times supporters get frustrated with him because when he's at his best, he's a top class player. And if he can get the consistency, there's no limit to what he can achieve. And I think when people look at Rashford, they say, right, okay, well, is he going to score enough goals from the wide position? The answer is 100% yes, he is. And I think the reason I say that is because, yes, he's not playing centre forward, but inevitably he ends up in a centre forward position, because what we've got is a player like Martial. He's more accustomed and more ability-wise at holding the ball up with his back to goal. But the runs that he makes, he'll start off in a centre forward position, but then he drifts over to the left-hand side. He'll drag a centre back with him, and then lo and behold, that leaves a space then for Rashford to make that run from the left-hand side and end up in the centre forward position. And that's where he's getting so many of his goals from. So there's a really good understanding between those two players.
Anthony Martial, before football stopped because of the pandemic, was having a really good season because he was moved through the middle. But before that time, when him and Martial were playing, what we saw a lot of the time was a kind of fluency of, right, one's through the middle, one's on the left, but they were able to kind of interlink and interchange. Who's best, do you think, play? I know you say that Rashford's best role is on the left-hand side, but you can argue that it's the Eden Hazard effect, and that when he moves through the middle, he still is dragged over to the left-hand side, and there's no one through the middle. So can we have a situation where Rashford is playing on the left-hand side and Martial's through the middle but doesn't want to go back over?
No, the thing is with Martial, he always drifts over to the left-hand side. It's as simple as that. And I think the way that United play, either whether it's with a front three or a 4-2-3-1 or even split strikers, the forwards are expected to drift into the wider areas because he doesn't want that centre forward to just be there all the time. When you're getting a centre forward to drift to the left or to drift to the right, it's to try and open up a gap between your two centre backs.
That someone has to take advantage of, though, and that's what
Yes.
I'm saying. If both of them are kind of left-sided players, when Hazard was put through the middle, he was crossing to himself, and of course he wasn't there. That's always a danger when you've got two players that are really, really good, but they have this tendency to want to come in from the left-hand side.
Yeah, but what you'll find is like I say, with Martial, he will start as the focal point, as the centre forward, but he drifts over to the left-hand side, and you can guarantee Rashford will end up in the centre forward position. And they've got the intelligence between the two of them. I think there's an unbelievable understanding because I think what we have to look at, before the return of Martial, when he was out injured, I think Rashford had 12 appearances in all competitions and 4 goals. From Norwich onward, which was late October, when Martial came back into the team, Rashford had 18 appearances, all competitions, 14 goals. So that is incredible. It's a huge jump. And yes, it is full credit to Rashford for taking on this position, the intelligence that he's got, but it's also the link up and the understanding that he has with Martial that enables him to do that.
Who will benefit most when everybody is fit from Bruno Fernandes? Would it be Rashford or would it be Martial?
I think it will be both because of the runs that they make. I think when you look at a player like Bruno Fernandes coming in, and we can see the difference that he's made to this team. Good players, intelligent players make players around them better. And I think what happens is if you've got Rashford, if you've got Martial, you've got Dan James, whoever it may be, that are going to make the runs. What you've got now is a huge element of trust. So I think what we've probably seen in the past when United haven't had that creative spark on the pitch, you've had Martial, you've had Rashford in particular, making runs, but then getting frustrated because they're thinking to themselves, even if I make this run, I'm not going to get the ball. Whereas if you look at Bruno Fernandes, his first few starts, Martial doesn't even look at him because he knows if he makes the run, Bruno Fernandes has got the ability to find him. So that in itself will bring more goals, it will bring more excitement, and it will bring the best out of individual players around Fernandes.
Do you think United need to sign a striker?
I don't think so because of the way that they're playing at the moment. I think if you were to, the problem is there's been a lot of talk about Harry Kane. And I think Harry Kane is a sensational footballer and he would make any team better. The problem that you would have if you did sign Harry Kane is that you have to build a team around him. So if you're having to build a team around him, is it going to affect Martial? Is it going to affect Rashford? Is it going to affect Bruno Fernandes? Because that's what you do. It's similar to the effect with Paul Pogba. When Paul Pogba came, you go, right, we're going to build a team around him. But they weren't able to build a team around Paul Pogba. So not only did the team suffer at times, but Paul Pogba suffered. So if you're going to bring in another centre forward, it's got to be ideal. You've got to have the idealistics of how Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants to play. And it reminds me very much of when Guardiola took over at Manchester City, the way that he wanted to play. Everybody thought it was the end of the line for Aguero when Jesus came in. And Aguero, who was already a world-class centre forward, he became even better. And all of a sudden, he was drifting out to the left, drifting out to the right. And I think that's the way that United want to play, with having that fluidity amongst the front three.
The majority of Manchester United fans love Marcus Rashford, but like any football team, there's always that kind of, those one or two that they've made their mind up early, they ain't changing it. They're not, it's not a case of not having him, but they still find faults with him. Look, he's a wonderful young talent that could be a superstar going forward, even bigger than he is right now. Why do some people still think, nah, not for me?
Because sometimes, like you just quite rightly said, it takes a lot to change, people's opinions. But I think with Rashford, I think what we've seen this season is that Manchester United are a so much more superior team when he's in it. And the question marks that were always thrown about over Lukaku was that, well, he doesn't do it in the big games. That can't be thrown at Rashford because the number of goals that he scored against the top teams. He scored 8 this season against your, historical top 6, should we say. And sometimes people need a little bit of time to be converted. I think if you're going to judge him as a centre forward, there will be question marks because at times he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. But drifting over to this left-hand side now and becoming a centre forward eventually, it's been unbelievable. The transformation has been outstanding. And I think it was already there because if you looked at him when he played for England, he didn't play as a centre forward because of Harry Kane. He would play on the left-hand side or at times on the right-hand side, and the goals were flowing when he played for England. So full credit to Solskjaer and full credit to Rashford. And in my opinion, no question about it, he is going to do unbelievably well for Manchester United. And let's not forget, he's still only 22 years of age.
Yeah, and he is actually one of very few who've benefited from this time off. It's been a nightmare for everyone else, but he's been able to continue this recovery from injury, and hopefully it's not long before we see him and Martial and maybe Pogba and Fernandes all as an attacking quartet for Manchester United.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.